I want to divorce my cheating husband, but the husband of the other woman showed up and gave me $100 million, saying, "Don't divorce him just yet. Just wait for 3 more months." I was 34 years old when this stranger sat across from me in a private members club in San Francisco and told me exactly how my life was about to implode. The room was cold, minimalist, filled with the kind of aggressive sunlight that makes you squint. Timothy, that was his name, didn't look like a savior. He looked like a balance sheet made flesh. He pushed a dossier across the marble table. "Your husband, Jason, is sleeping with Brianna," he said. His voice was flat, bored almost. "And he has already drafted the divorce papers. He intends to serve you on April 14th. That is one day before his company's IPO lockup period ends." I stared at him. The air in the room seemed to vanish. April 14th. That was 89 days away. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. I'd love to know who's part of our community. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table. I didn't even blink. My body wanted to enact a violent, immediate rejection of the reality Timothy had just placed in front of me. I wanted to storm out, drive home, and burn Jason's clothes on the front lawn. I wanted the satisfaction of the explosion. But Timothy's voice cut through the noise in my head like a scalpel. "Sit down, Victoria," he said. "Let's do the math." I sat. Timothy opened the second section of the dossier. It was a single sheet of paper with 2 columns. On the left, a number, $500,000. On the right, $100 million. "This is the vesting cliff," he said. "In Silicon Valley, we talk about cliffs all the time. It is the moment potential energy converts into kinetic wealth. Right now, you are standing on the edge. If you jump today, if you file for divorce, if you confront him, if you let your anger drive the car, you fall. You get the prenup minimum. You get $500,000, which is exactly what Jason wants you to get. He is priced in your rage. He is banking on it." He tapped the right column. "But if you wait, if you stand on that cliff for 90 days and do not jump, the ground rises up to meet you. The lockup period expires. The founder shares vest. And because California is a community property state, half of those shares become yours the second the market opens." He leaned back, studying me with the cold detachment of a professor explaining economics to a freshman. "Think of it as the casino of patience," he continued. "Most people play the slot machines of emotion. They pull the lever immediately because they need the flashing lights and the noise. They need to feel something happen right now. But the house always wins against slot players. The real money is at the poker table in the back room, where the players don't show their cards until the pot is full. Immediate retaliation provides linear satisfaction. You yell, you feel better for an hour. Strategic patience provides exponential leverage. Every day you stay silent. You aren't just waiting. You are compounding your equity." I looked at the numbers. 500,000 versus 100 million. "He thinks I'm stupid," I said. It wasn't a question. "He thinks you're emotional," Timothy corrected. "He thinks you're a gardener who doesn't understand cap tables or vesting schedules. He thinks you'll react like a wounded wife, not a shareholder." A gardener. That was what Jason called my landscape architecture firm when he was trying to be dismissive. Cute. Quaint. "If I wait," I said, my voice steadying, "I have to live with him. I have to sleep in the same bed." "Yes," Timothy said. "You have to be an actress. You have to perform the role of the happy, oblivious wife while he lies to your face. It will be the hardest thing you ever do. It will feel like swallowing glass every morning." He slid a pen across the table. It was heavy, expensive. "This is an accord," he said, indicating the document beneath the numbers. "It states that you agree to coordinate your legal filing with mine. We strike together on day 91. If you break formation early, we both lose. If you hold the line, we own him." I looked at the pen. I thought about the last 10 years. I thought about the nights I stayed up designing garden schematics, while Jason complained about his vision being misunderstood by investors. I thought about the way he looked at me now, like I was a piece of furniture he had outgrown. He didn't just want to leave me. He wanted to erase my contribution. He wanted to cash out on the life we built and leave me with the receipt. I picked up the pen. The metal was cool against my skin. "This isn't a marriage anymore," I said, realizing it for the first time. "It's a hostile takeover. Correct? Timothy said. And you are the majority shareholder. I signed my name. The ink was dark and permanent. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt a click in my chest, like a safety being switched off. 90 days, I said. Timothy nodded. 90 days. Welcome to the board, Victoria. I stood up. The sun was still shining outside, aggressive and bright, but the world looked different now. It wasn't a tragedy. It was a transaction. And I was about to close the biggest deal of my life. I drove home that afternoon in a daze. Our house in Sea Cliff was a glass box overlooking the ocean. Jason's dream, not mine. It was cold, sterile, beautiful, and empty. I parked my 10-year-old sedan next to his brand-new Porsche. The contrast made me nauseous. Inside, Jason was in his home office. He didn't look up when I entered. Hey, he mumbled. Dinner's gonna be late. I'm slammed. I looked at him. Really looked at him. The slump of his shoulders, the arrogance in his jaw. He was texting someone under the desk. Brianna. I knew it now. I could see the slight smirk on his face, the dopamine hit of a secret message. That's fine, I said. I'll order something. My voice was steady. It was a miracle. I went into the kitchen and poured a glass of water. My hands were shaking so hard I spilled half of it. I gripped the counter, breathing through my nose. 90 days. Just 90 days. That night, I started my investigation. I waited until Jason was in the shower. I slipped into his office. I didn't need to guess his password. It was his birthday. Narcissist. I opened his hidden folder, the one labeled Project V. V for Victoria. Or maybe V for Void. It was all there. The drafts Timothy had shown me, but more. Notes on my mental instability. A plan to gaslight me into therapy so he could use it against me in custody hearings if we ever had kids. He had itemized my jewelry. He had estimated the resale value of my car. This wasn't a marriage ending. It was a liquidation sale. I felt a sob rising in my throat, hot and acidic. I wanted to smash his computer. I wanted to burn the house down. But then I remembered the number. 100 million. I closed the laptop. I wiped my fingerprints from the desk. I went back to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. When Jason came out of the bathroom, smelling of expensive soap and deceit, I smiled at him. You look tired, honey, I said. Do you want a back rub? He looked surprised, then pleased. Yeah, that would be great. I touched him. I put my hands on the shoulders of the man who was planning to destroy me, and I rubbed the tension away. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. It felt like betraying myself. But as I worked my thumbs into his muscles, I imagined the calendar pages turning. 89. 88. The architecture of a lie is a structural marvel. You have to lay the foundation of normalcy so thick that nobody sees the cracks in the load-bearing walls. For the next 2 months, I became an expert in structural engineering. I reinforced the facade. I cooked his favorite meals, risotto on Tuesdays, steak on Fridays. I listened to him rant about his visionless board members, nodding in all the right places, never once mentioning that I was secretly meeting with the man who intended to decapitate that board. I played the part of the oblivious, supportive partner so well that Jason actually started to relax. His guard dropped. It was pathetic, really. He thought he was a genius, but he was just a man who underestimated the woman washing his dishes. He got careless. He left his phone face up on the marble island. He stopped closing his laptop when I walked into the room. He thought he had one. He thought I was stupid. But every night while he slept, I was awake. I was documenting. I took photos of his texts to Brianna. She has no clue, he wrote. Can't wait for April. Freedom. I screenshotted bank transfers where he was moving liquid cash into offshore accounts in the Caymans, labeling them vendor payments. I recorded him bragging to his frat brother friends on speakerphone about how everything was falling into place and how he was going to be the first bachelor billionaire of his cohort. I was building a silo of evidence. And strangely, every piece of proof I gathered made the silence easier to bear. It wasn't submission anymore. It was data collection. One morning, about 6 weeks in, Jason looked at me over his espresso. You seem different, he said. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my face didn't move. Do I? Yeah. You're not nagging me about work anymore. You're just chill. It's nice. I smiled. It felt like stretching a rubber band until it was about to snap. I guess I just realized what's important, Jason. I realized we need to focus on the future. He nodded, satisfied, and went back to his phone. He had no idea. He thought my silence was peace. He didn't know it was the quiet before the execution. Day 60 arrived. I met Timothy in a safe house this time, a rental property he owned in Marin, tucked away in the trees where no one from the city would see us. The fog was rolling in, thick and gray. I brought my hard drive. You look tired, Timothy said as I walked in. He was wearing a cashmere sweater, looking less like a shark and more like a predator at rest. I admitted. Living a double life is exhausting. I feel like I'm haunting my own house. You're doing great, he said. He didn't offer sympathy. He offered validation. He plugged the drive into his computer and scrolled through the files. His eyebrows went up. This is thorough. I learned from the best, I said dryly. He taught me how to hide things. I just applied his methodology against him. This is enough, Timothy said, tapping the screen. We have him on embezzlement, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. The divorce is just the cherry on top. We can bury him. We can make sure he never runs a lemonade stand again. Not yet, I said. We wait for the vest. Of course. Then Timothy turned his laptop around. The screen showed a complex organizational chart. I have something for you, too. A disclosure. He looked me in the eye. I didn't tell you the whole truth at the club, Victoria. I'm not just a scorned husband. I'm not just the lead investor. I stiffened. What are you? I'm the architect of the hostile takeover, he said. Jason thinks he's taking the company public to gain independence. But the IPO is actually a trap, I said. The moment the lockup expires, the governance structure shifts. And that is where you come in. He slid a shareholder agreement across the table. When the shares vest, you will own 40% of the voting stock. I own 20%. Together, we control 60%. We are the majority. We can do whatever we want. We can fire him. We can sell the company. We can burn it to the ground. I looked at the chart. I looked at Jason's name at the top, precarious and vulnerable. I don't want to burn it, I said quietly. Timothy tilted his head. No, I said. I built the product roadmap for the first 2 years. I coded the initial logic while he was networking at bars. I know the tech better than he does. He's just the face. I was the brain. I pushed the paper back toward him. When we fire him, I said, I want his seat on the board. Timothy stared at me for a long moment. The silence stretched, heavy with calculation. Then slowly, a grin spread across his face. It was the first time I had seen him look genuinely impressed. You're ruthless, Victoria, he said. I like it. I learned that from him too, I said. He priced in my rage. He didn't price in my ambition. We shook hands. The alliance was sealed. I wasn't just a scorned wife anymore. I wasn't just a victim waiting for a payout. I was a corporate raider. And I was coming for the crown. The final month was a blur of high-gloss anxiety. The IPO date loomed like a storm front. The media frenzy began in earnest. Jason was on the cover of magazines, the boy genius of Silicon Valley, staring out with that visionary squint he practiced in the mirror. Brianna was always in the background of the B-roll footage, holding his clipboard, looking adoringly at him. I stayed home. I watched them on TV in my empty kitchen. My wife has been my rock, Jason told a reporter on CNBC, squeezing out a fake tear. I couldn't have done this without her. I laughed out loud. It was a cold sound. You have no idea, I told the screen. The night of the IPO gala finally arrived. It was day 90. The vesting cliff. The event was held at the SMOMA. Black tie. Champagne towers. Security that cost more than my parents' house. Everyone who was anyone in tech was there to kiss the ring. Jason was high on adrenaline and arrogance. He looked like a king who had just conquered the world. I wore a red dress. Not subtle. Not the supportive wife beige I usually wore to blend into the wallpaper. It was structured, sharp, and blood red. I wanted to be seen. You look intense, Jason said when he saw me in the foyer. He adjusted his cufflinks, checking his reflection in the glass. It's a big night, I said. We should celebrate properly. The plan was simple. Jason intended to serve me the divorce papers the next morning, as soon as the market opened. He wanted the divorce filed before the stock price jumped, locking in my settlement at the lower, pre-IPO valuation. He thought he was being surgical. He didn't know that the vesting schedule was based on calendar dates, not market hours. At midnight tonight, Pacific Standard Time, the shares became mine. I circulated the room. I charmed the investors. I whispered in the ears of the board members, planting seeds of stability while Jason was doing shots at the bar with his frat boy developers. I played the part of the First Lady of Tech one last time. Brianna was there, wearing a dress that cost more than my car. She was standing near the VIP section, checking her phone. She avoided eye contact with me. She knew. She knew the plan. She was just waiting for the clock to run out so she could step into my life. I walked up to her at the bar. Hello, Brianna, I said. She jumped, nearly spilling her drink. Oh. Hi, Victoria. Great party, right? It is, I said, leaning in slightly. Enjoy it. It's the last one you'll be invited to. Her eyes widened. Excuse me. You heard me. I smiled, turned on my heel, and walked away. I found Timothy near the stage. He was holding a glass of sparkling water, watching the room with the detached interest of an anthropologist. He gave me a barely perceptible nod. It was time. Jason took the microphone for his speech. The room hushed. He talked about vision. He talked about sacrifice. He talked about the future he was building. He sounded magnificent. He sounded like a fraud. And to my wife, he said, gesturing vaguely in my direction without actually looking at me. Thank you for everything. The crowd applauded. I clapped slowly. 1, 2, 3. I checked my watch. 11:59 p.m. Jason stepped off the stage, beaming, sweat glistening on his forehead. He walked toward me, probably to give me a kiss for the cameras to seal the image of the happy family before he destroyed it in the morning. The digital clock on the wall clicked over. Midnight. The money vested. I didn't kiss him. I stepped into his personal space, close enough for a lover's whisper. I know about Brianna, I said softly. He froze. His smile stayed plastered on his face, but his eyes went dead. Victoria, not here. I know about the offshore accounts in the Caymans, I continued, my voice steady. And I know you were going to serve me tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. His face went gray. The champagne glass in his hand trembled. What? How do you? But you're too late, I said, pulling back just enough to see the fear flood his pupils. It's midnight, Jason. The lockup is over. The shares are mine. I own half. And I've already assigned my proxy votes to Timothy. He stammered, looking around the room as if searching for an exit. You can't. I have the papers. Papers don't matter, I said. Math matters. And you just lost the count. I turned and walked away, the red dress flowing behind me like a flag of war, leaving him standing there with his mouth open, watching his kingdom crumble in real time. The sun rose over San Francisco like a spotlight turning on in an interrogation room. It was 8 a.m. on day 91. I sat at the head of the mahogany table in the executive boardroom of Jason's company. I was wearing a suit I had bought 3 months ago specifically for this moment, navy blue, sharp armor. Timothy sat to my right, scrolling through his iPad with the casual indifference of an executioner. The door flew open. Jason stormed in. He wasn't wearing the tuxedo from last night. He was wearing jeans and a t-shirt, his hair disheveled, his eyes rimmed with red. He looked like a college student who had pulled an all-nighter, not the CEO of a billion-dollar company. You can't be here, he snapped, pointing a shaking finger at me. Security. Why is she in the building? She is a majority shareholder, Timothy said without looking up. She has every right to be here. In fact, she called the meeting. Jason froze. He looked around the room. The other board members, 3 men and 2 women who had tolerated his arrogance for years because he made them money, were silent. They wouldn't meet his eyes. They knew the math. They knew who held the power now. This is a domestic dispute, Jason spat, turning his desperate gaze to them. Victoria and I are going through a transition. She is trying to use the company as leverage in a divorce. It's personal. It has nothing to do with the business. It has everything to do with the business, I said. My voice was calm. It was the voice I had practiced in the shower for 90 days. I slid a single file folder down the long table. It spun perfectly, stopping inches from his hand. That file contains proof of embezzlement, I said. You moved company funds into personal offshore accounts to hide assets from me. That is fraud. That exposes this company to liability. That breaches your fiduciary duty. Jason stared at the folder. He didn't open it. He knew what was inside. I can explain, he stammered. It was temporary. A bridge loan. I was going to put it back. And the insider trading? Timothy added softly. Shorting your own stock before the lockup ended? Because you knew the divorce news would tank the price. Jason went pale. I didn't. I never. Victoria provided the text messages, Timothy said. And the trade logs. Jason looked at me. For a second, I saw the man I used to love. The boy in the garage. He looked small. He looked terrified. Victoria, he whispered. Please. We can fix this. I'll give you whatever you want. Half? You want half? Fine. Take the house. Take the cash. Just don't take my company. It's who I am. I stood up. I walked over to the window, looking out at the city's skyline. I remembered the nights I sat alone in our glass house while he was working late with Brianna. I remembered the way he looked at me when he thought I wasn't looking, with pity and contempt. It's not your company anymore, I said, turning back to him. And I don't want half. I want you gone. I looked at the board members. I moved for a vote of no confidence. Effective immediately. I second, Timothy said. All in favor? 5 hands went up. Jason stared at the hands. He looked like he had been shot. He slumped into a chair, the fight draining out of him in a rush of air. You ruined me, he said. No, I corrected. I just audited you. Security arrived 2 minutes later. They were polite but firm. They escorted Jason out of the building he had designed. He didn't scream. He didn't fight. He just walked out, a ghost in his own kingdom. There was one last piece of business. I walked down the hall to the PR office. Brianna was at her desk, frantically typing, trying to salvage a narrative that was already burning down. She looked up when I entered. Her face was gray. She knew. Pack a box, I said. You can't fire me, she said, her voice trembling. I have a contract. You violated your NDA by sharing confidential IPO data with a third party, I said. I have the emails. You're fired for cause. No severance. No reference. She started to cry. It wasn't a pretty cry. It was the ugly, gasping sob of someone realizing that consequences are real. He told me he was leaving you, she choked out. He said you didn't understand him. He lied to you too, I said. Take the box, Brianna. And leave the key card. I watched her go. I felt nothing. No joy. No vindication. Just the quiet satisfaction of a ledger being balanced. I walked back to the elevator. Timothy was waiting for me. How does it feel? He asked. Heavy, I said. But good. We walked out into the San Francisco sunlight together. The air smelled like ocean salt and gasoline. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the first honest air I had breathed in 3 months. What now? Timothy asked. I looked at him. We were partners now. We had a company to run. We had a mess to clean up. Now, I said, we rebuild. I stood in the garden of my new home a week later. It wasn't a glass box suspended over the ocean like the one Jason had chosen to showcase his ego. It was a warm, Spanish-style villa in the hills, with terracotta tiles and dirt I could actually dig my hands into. I was on my knees, planting jasmine. The soil was cool and dark under my fingernails. For the first time in years, I wasn't worried about making a mess. I wasn't worried about being too much or too loud or too gardening. I was just me. My phone buzzed on the patio table. It was a notification from the bank. The transfer was complete. $100 million. It is a number that doesn't feel real until you see it on a screen. It looks like a glitch. It looks like a phone number. I stared at it, waiting for the rush of adrenaline, the urge to go buy a yacht or a private island. But the rush didn't come. Instead, I felt a profound, quiet stillness. This is the concept of the $100 million mirror. For 10 years, Jason had acted as my mirror. But he was a funhouse mirror, warped and cracked, designed to make me look small so he could look big. He reflected a version of me that was needy, dependent, and lucky to be allowed in the room. He told me my contributions were invisible. He told me my value was zero. The money in that account wasn't just currency. It was a correction. It was an audit of my existence. It reflected the value I had always had, the value he tried to erase. He thought I was a depreciating asset he could liquidate before the market opened. He forgot that assets can appreciate. He forgot that without the foundation, the skyscraper falls over. I didn't take the money because I was greedy. I took it because it was the cost of my silence. It was the back pay for every dinner I cooked while he was texting Brianna. It was the invoice for every time I dimmed my own light so he wouldn't feel threatened. It was the price of his betrayal. And it was worth every penny. Timothy called me later that afternoon. "The board has ratified the changes," he said. "We have a new interim CEO." The stock actually went up on the news of the leadership change. Apparently, the market likes stability more than it likes visionary volatility. "And Jason?" I asked. "He's calling lawyers," Timothy said. "But nobody will take the case. The evidence is too clean. He's radioactive, Victoria. He's done." "Good," I said. "I have a question," Timothy said. "You have the capital now. You could retire. You could buy an island. What are you going to do?" I looked out at my garden. I looked at the drafting table I had set up in the sunroom, covered in blueprints for a new sustainable park project I had been dreaming about for 5 years but never had the confidence to pitch. "I'm not retiring," I said. "I'm building." I launched my own firm the next day. No partners. No silent investors. Just me, my vision, and the capital to execute it without asking for permission. Looking back on those 90 days, I realized something about power. We are taught that power is loud. We think it looks like screaming, like throwing drinks, like making a scene. But true power is silent. It is the discipline to wait when everything in you wants to react. It is the ability to sit across from your enemy and smile, knowing you are holding a royal flush while he is betting the mortgage on a pair of twos. Silence is not weakness. Silence is a container. And if you fill it with strategy, with evidence, and with patience, it becomes the most dangerous weapon in the world. I didn't win because I was lucky. I didn't win because a stranger saved me. Timothy gave me the map, but I was the one who walked the path. I walked through the fire of my own marriage for 3 months and didn't get burned. I walked out the other side not just rich, but unbreakable. I wiped the dirt from my hands and walked back into my house. My house. Bought with my money. Filled with my peace. The vesting cliff was over. The ground had risen to meet me. And the view from here was spectacular. If this story reminded you of your own worth, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And tell me in the comments, would you have taken the deal or walked away early? Subscribe for more stories on the art of strategic survival.